I've seen a lot of things in my life. The world likes to call me lucky, but luck's a strange word when you've watched as much darkness as I have. I've seen the good, the bad, and the kind of ugly that doesn't show up on a movie screen. And still, nothing I ever witnessed could prepare me for that night, the night I saw him, twice. It wasn't supposed to be a special night. The rain had been falling since sunset, tapping on the roof like a metronome for thoughts I didn't want to think. I sat alone in my study, the light from an old lamp spreading just enough to reach the Bible on my desk. My hands were trembling a little, not from age, but from the weight of silence. Silence has a way of revealing everything you've tried to bury. Outside, the world was burning not with fire, but with anger. I'd been watching the news earlier. Another war, another lie, another crowd shouting justice while hating each other at the same time. It's a strange kind of apocalypse when people stop caring but keep talking. We live surrounded by light and screens, and yet we've never been this blind. I remember whispering into the dark, not as a prayer but as a confession. Lord, are you still watching? Because it feels like we've lost the plot. No thunder answered. No miracle happened. Just the low hum of the lamp and the old clock on the wall counting every second I'd wasted in pride and disbelief. I used to think I understood endings. I've filmed them, directed them, written them. But lately the line between fiction and truth has blurred. The world feels like a movie that's gone on too long, where no one remembers the story anymore. That night, I was tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep can fix, the kind that seeps into your bones when your soul's been awake too long. I poured myself a cup of black coffee, left it untouched, and stared at the window. My reflection looked back at me, older, emptier, but still pretending. Then something shifted. The air grew heavy, not in fear, but in presence. I can't explain it. It wasn't a sound or a light at first, just the feeling that the room was no longer mine. I looked up, and in that moment I knew I wasn't alone. The rain stopped. The ticking clock went silent. And somewhere between the last beat of my heart and the next breath, the air filled with a warmth that made my knees tremble. It was like time itself paused to listen. And that's when I saw him. The first time I saw him, I couldn't move. It wasn't terror that froze me, it was recognition. You don't mistake that presence for anything else. The room didn't fill with light, it became light. Not blinding, not burning, just a stillness that wrapped around everything, even the air in my lungs. He didn't speak right away. He didn't need to. The silence between us said more than words ever could. Every sin, every regret, every lie I told myself, it all stood there with me in that room, naked in the glow of his gaze. When he finally spoke, his voice wasn't loud. It was the kind of voice that doesn't enter through your ears but settles straight into your soul. "Clint," he said, "you've seen much of the world, but you've forgotten how to see." My lips trembled. "See what?" I whispered. "The end," he answered. I didn't understand at first. I thought he meant death mine, maybe the world's. But then his eyes, deep as eternity, shifted toward the window. I followed his gaze, and the world outside began to change. The rain had stopped, but the streets were still glistening. People moved beneath the streetlights, faces lit by their phones, eyes hollow, hearts somewhere else. Cars passed, engines humming like mechanical heartbeats. A woman shouted at a man in the rain. A child cried, but no one turned. I watched them, all of them, living, breathing, surviving, but no one seeing. And that's when it hit me. The end he spoke of wasn't an event, it was a condition. The end had already begun, slowly, quietly, the way frost kills a garden overnight. Not with fire, but with forgetting. I felt something inside me collapse, not fear, but grief. I wanted to say I was sorry, for myself, for all of us, but the words wouldn't come. My throat burned. He turned to me again, closer now. The warmth I'd felt earlier changed. It became heavy, pressing against my chest. "You built stories that made men believe in heroes," he said softly, "but now they no longer believe in hope." "I didn't mean to," I stammered. "No one ever does," he replied. That's how endings work, not with explosions, but with silence. And then he was gone, just like that. No flash, no sound, only absence. The room felt colder than before, and for a moment I thought I'd dreamed it. But when I looked down, I saw my coffee cup shaking in my hands. The steam had turned to mist, fading into the air. That's when I realized something that chilled me more than death ever could. He hadn't come to comfort me, he'd come to wake me. I don't remember falling asleep that night. If it was a dream, it was the kind that doesn't begin, it just happens. One moment I was staring at the cold cup of coffee, the next I was somewhere else entirely. It wasn't darkness. It was absence, as if the world had exhaled and forgotten to breathe back in. The ground beneath me was dry, cracked, endless. A wind moved across it, carrying dust that shimmered like ash under a dying sky. And then, in that wasteland, I saw him again. The same figure, the same calm, but this time there was sorrow in his eyes, a weight that made the air tremble. He stood at a distance, hands folded in front of him, the horizon bleeding behind his shoulders in shades of gray and red. "Why am I here?" I asked. My voice sounded small, like it didn't belong to me. "To see what you would not believe," he said. And then the world moved. The cracked earth beneath us began to show visions, as if the ground itself was remembering. I saw cities, millions of lights, stretching into the dark, but none of them warm. Towers stood like cold giants, blinking in silence. People hurried through the streets, faces blue from the glow of their screens, their voices tangled in noise that said nothing. They were alive, but they looked empty, as if someone had stolen the sky from inside them. Jesus walked beside me, not speaking, just letting me see. I saw children growing up in front of machines, learning more about algorithms than about love. I saw churches filled with people singing louder than ever, but their songs echoed off hollow hearts. I saw nations shouting peace while sharpening their weapons behind closed doors. "Is this the end?" I asked, though the words felt foolish the moment they left me. He looked at me, and his answer was quiet. "This is what it looks like when love dies." The wind stopped, the air thickened, and for a moment the silence screamed. I felt tears burning my eyes. Not for myself, for us. For the world I'd known, for the beauty we'd traded for convenience, for the truth we'd replaced with comfort. Then, suddenly, light split the sky. It wasn't blinding, it was honest. It revealed everything, the hurt, the apathy, the loneliness. It showed me the world as he saw it, broken, bleeding, but still loved. And then he turned to me again. "Clint," he said, "I showed you the end not so you'd fear it, but so you'd understand it. The end is not destruction, it's awakening. The world will end the day it stops seeking grace." The light around him began to fade. The wind picked up again, whispering across the dry earth. I tried to reach for him, but my hands caught only air and light. Before everything dissolved, I heard him say one last thing, soft as a prayer, heavy as truth. "When I return, I will not ask what you built. I will ask whom you loved." Then he was gone, and I was standing alone again, one man beneath a sky that no longer had stars. I stood there, still tasting the dust in the air, when his voice returned not from the sky, but from within the silence. It was the kind of sound that doesn't ask to be heard. It asks to be remembered. "Clint," he said, "every generation believes they're living in the end. They watch the storms, the wars, the collapsing empires, and they say, 'This must be it.' But the true ending isn't written in the clouds. It's written in hearts that no longer feel." I turned slowly, and there he was again, not radiant this time, just present. The light around him flickered like candlelight, gentle, human. He stepped closer until we were face to face. "When love becomes a memory instead of a mission," he continued, "the world begins to end. Not with fire, not with trumpets, but with silence. The silence of mercy withheld, the silence of compassion forgotten." His words hit me harder than any sermon ever could. Because I'd lived that silence. I'd built walls out of pride, called them boundaries, and then wondered why I felt alone. He gestured toward the horizon, now filled with faint figures. People walking, carrying invisible burdens. "Do you see them?" he asked. "Yes," I whispered. "They look lost." "They are not lost," he said. "They are waiting for someone to remind them that they are still loved." He paused, then added softly, "That is what my return means, Clint. Not the cracking of the earth or the burning of the sky. It means love will walk the streets again through those who remember me. The end will not come when the sun fades. It will come when kindness does." I felt something inside me break, a quiet breaking, like ice melting at the first touch of spring. For years I'd believed faith was about rules, about right and wrong. But standing there face to face with him, I realized it was never about perfection. It was always about connection. He reached out his hand and placed it against my chest. A warmth spread through me, deeper than pain, deeper than time. "You have carried guilt longer than I ever asked you to," he said. "Let it go. Regret is a heavy stone, and you cannot build a bridge with stones you refuse to set down." Tears came again, not forced, just real. "I don't know how," I said. He smiled that kind of smile that forgives before you even ask. "You start by forgiving yourself. That's where resurrection begins." The wind rose around us again, carrying his words far beyond where I stood. "Tell them," he said, "that the end is not something to fear. Tell them it's the beginning of remembering, and when I return I will not come to punish. I will come to heal what they forgot to love." The light dimmed, fading back into the color of the horizon. I tried to hold on to it, but his last words followed me into the quiet like a heartbeat that wouldn't stop. "Every act of love," he whispered, "delays the end." When I opened my eyes, I was back in the car. The world outside was quiet again. The rain had returned, soft and steady, like it was trying to wash something clean. For a while, I just sat there staring at the steering wheel, unsure if I was breathing or just remembering how the scent of wet earth drifted through the cracked window, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled low, tired, like an echo from the dream I'd just left. But it wasn't a dream, not anymore. Every word he said still burned inside me, not like fire, but like truth. I could feel it moving through me, reshaping me, undoing all the walls I'd built to keep myself safe. I whispered into the empty car, "Every act of love delays the end," and it was like saying it out loud made the world slow down. I realized how long it had been since I'd said something worth meaning. I drove home as dawn began to break. The streets glistened, the kind of beauty you only see when you've run out of words. I passed a man standing in the rain with a cardboard sign. Normally, I would have looked away, guilt disguised as indifference, but this time I stopped. I rolled down the window, handed him what cash I had, and for a moment our eyes met. There was no thank you, no small talk, just that quiet recognition between two souls still trying. And for the first time in years, I felt alive. When I got home, the house felt different, not because it had changed, but because I had. The photos on the wall, the old awards, the scripts gathering dust, they weren't trophies anymore. They were reminders of a man who'd been searching for applause when all he ever needed was peace. I walked to my desk and opened the Bible again, the same page I'd left open before. Revelation. Funny how the word means an unveiling. The end, he said, wasn't destruction, it was awakening. And suddenly that word revelation didn't scare me anymore. That morning I made a list. Names of people I'd wronged, people I'd lost along the way, people I'd loved badly. I didn't know what I'd say to them, but I knew I had to try. One by one, I picked up the phone. Some didn't answer, some did, some cried. One of them, someone I hadn't spoken to in decades, said, "I've been waiting for this call." Every conversation felt like a small resurrection. The more I spoke, the lighter I became. The fear that had haunted me for years, the fear of endings, began to dissolve. Because I understood now, endings aren't punishments. They're invitations. By afternoon, I found myself standing outside, coffee in hand, watching the sunlight push through the clouds. The world was still broken, the news was still bad, people were still hurting, but for the first time, I didn't feel powerless. because he had shown me something that morning. I didn't need to fix the whole world. I just needed to keep one small light burning. And as I stood there, the warmth on my face, the rhythm of rain fading into birdsong, I realized something simple, something sacred. I wasn't afraid anymore. The next evening I sat on the porch as the sun went down. The world looked washed, rinsed by the storm, as if the sky had taken a deep breath and finally exhaled. The wooden steps creaked under me, the air smelled of pine and rain, and somewhere down the road a dog barked like it was reminding the earth that life still went on. I held a cup of coffee, now cold, but I didn't mind. I wasn't drinking it for warmth anymore. I was holding it for company, the kind of quiet companionship you find when you finally stop running from yourself. The world hasn't changed since that night. Not on the surface, anyway. The news is still cruel. People are still afraid, still angry. We're still building towers while our hearts fall apart. But something inside me has shifted. I no longer look at the world like a man waiting for it to end. I look at it like someone watching it begin again. I think about what he said. Every act of love delays the end. That line haunts me, not like a ghost, but like a promise. It makes me notice things I used to miss, the small gestures that keep the world alive. A father holding his child's hand, a stranger helping someone across the street, an old woman feeding birds even when no one's watching. These are the moments holding the earth together, stronger than any storm or weapon. I'm not the man I was before that night. I still stumble, still doubt, still fall short of who I wish I could be, but I don't measure faith by certainty anymore. I measure it by compassion, by how many times I can choose grace when bitterness feels easier, by how often I can stay soft in a world that keeps trying to harden me. Sometimes I wonder why he showed it to me, the end, the emptiness, the silence. Maybe he knew I needed to see the world's brokenness to finally understand my own. Maybe he knew that fear isn't the enemy of faith, pride is, because pride makes you think you know better. But fear can still be redeemed. There's a strange peace in knowing how fragile we are. It makes every breath feel like a gift, every heartbeat like a miracle. I used to think peace was found in understanding everything. Now I know peace lives in surrender, in letting the unanswered questions just be. If you're listening to this, maybe you've felt it too, that quiet ache, that sense that the world's spinning faster than our souls can keep up. Maybe you've looked around and thought, we can't go on like this. I thought that too, but then I saw him, and he made me see something different. The end isn't coming to destroy us, it's coming to wake us up. And when it does, it won't be loud. It'll be the moment you forgive someone who doesn't deserve it, the moment you tell the truth when lying would be easier. The moment you look at someone, anyone, and finally see them the way he saw you, worth saving. The sun slipped below the trees, leaving behind a trail of gold across the clouds. The world was quiet again. Not the heavy silence of despair, but the kind that comes after a storm when everything broken is still waiting to heal. I whispered into the fading light, Lord, if you ever come again, I hope you find us still loving each other, still trying, still shining, even if it's just one light at a time. And as the night settled in, I felt that same warmth from before, gentle as a hand on my shoulder. I smiled because I knew he was listening. I took one last sip of cold coffee and said the only words that still matter to me now, words I'll carry until my last breath. Light is still stronger than darkness.